Mr. Aitchison, nice to see you.
Well, it's great to be here. Thanks, Rosie, for having me.
I have obviously a number of things I want to talk to you about. One of them, though, is tone, because certainly we've had a sense of the tone of this race over the past couple of debates. You've been someone who's talking about a more civil and unifying tone in politics overall, but also in this race. Who do you think is responsible for degrading the tone, if you will?
Well, I actually think that the tone of politics in Ottawa has been degrading for decades. I've been talking about the politics of division and the rhetoric that we hear in Ottawa since I arrived in Ottawa. I'm a small town mayor who grew up in municipal politics, where you focus on getting things done and solving problems for the people you represent. And I've just found that Ottawa is not always about that. It's about partisan cheap shots and question period and clickable moments on your social media. And I think it's bad for our politics, and it's bad for our country, and I think it's bad for our party too. Yeah. And I don't see how Canadians can trust us to govern and lead if we're attacking each other and divided as a movement and as a caucus.
One of the things you talked about in the last debate was winning over swing voters and the importance of doing that in the face of some of these issues around tone. How would you approach winning over swing voters and broadening the tent? Because that seems pretty important to winning the next election.
Well, we talked about it a little bit already. I think it's a question of tone. I think that we, as Conservatives, have to deliver our message in a reasonable tone. But it's also about the message. It's about making sure that we have a consistent message that's consistent with our principles and our values, but that I think is actually consistent with most Canadians' values. Mm-hmm. And sticking with that message. We need to be consistent throughout, and we need to make sure that we're speaking to Canadians in all parts of the country about issues that matter to them.
Okay, I have a couple more.
Yeah, I will add to that too, if I could, Rosemary.
Of course, yeah.
That it's about speaking to issues that matter to Canadians across the country, and not dividing Canadians. This is part of the problem with our politics overall. Our political war rooms in all parties have used the divisions that exist between Canadians to win votes, and I think it's time for political leadership to start talking about what brings Canadians together, and an inspirational message of hope and unity. That there's more that unites us than divides us, and I think that's a message that I think Canadians are ready to hear and desperate to hear.
I have a couple policy questions, because you do have some pieces of policy out there, or some clear positions on some issues. One of them is supply management, and you were very different than some of your colleagues on that stage this week. You've promised to get rid of supply management. How would you do that? Because as you well know, farmers have paid a lot of money to get quotas to become part of the system of supply management. So how would you propose to get rid of it?
Well, I'm a collaborator at first. I mean, I think it's very important to obviously start that discussion with farmers, and I see it as a transition away from a supply managed system to assistance. The federal government can assist farmers to market their products to the world. It's actually, the federal government playing the role that in part it was created for, to open markets for Canadian producers to the rest of the world. It adds, supply management adds about $600 a year to the grocery bill of the average Canadian family. This is about affordability. It's it's getting more and more expensive for Canadians to live. It's housing crisis. It's food. It's all of those things. But I'm not about demonizing farmers. They've done their best in a system that might have worked 50 years ago, but it actually limits their opportunity to market their products to the world.
Is a fair transition then you pay the full amount? You pay dollar for dollar for the quotas, which could be as much as $30 billion, or would you pay 50 cents on the dollar? Like, how would you evaluate that, or would that take time over a number of years?
It would definitely take time. You'd have to make those determinations through recommendations and collaboration with the industry. Maybe it's not buying out the quota dollar for dollar, but it's financial assistance to help create new markets around the world. Okay. If you're doing that, then maybe there's a mix of both into that. I don't know all the precise ways we'll do it, but we'll do it through collaboration. We'll do it through negotiation.
You've also said you'll get rid of the carbon tax. Will you tell Conservatives, will you flesh out in a more substantive way what you would do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and fight climate change if it's not going to be an individual carbon tax for people?
Yeah, absolutely. And my campaign, we've been releasing, policy videos, 2 to 3 minute policy videos, and there's going to be one coming out soon on my climate change plan.
Okay.
We absolutely have to meet our targets. We absolutely have to be serious about this issue. But my fundamental problem with a consumer carbon tax is that it punishes the most vulnerable in our society. People who literally cannot wait until the end of the quarter, the end of the year for a rebate. We need to be incentivizing and helping Canadians reduce their footprint. And I think that I know that there are lots of other tools that we can use to meet our targets and also to help the rest of the world meet their targets.
I want to go back to strategy of the race a little bit if I can. And many Canadians probably already know it's a ranked vote, so you can choose a number of sort of your first, second, and third. Are there candidates that you think that you're more aligned with, that you'd be hoping to get support from if they drop off? And then on the other side of that, would you recommend throwing support behind someone at some point in the race? Probably not now, I understand, but perhaps down the road.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of strategy involved in all of this, and my team is certainly talking about all that kind of stuff. Right now, I'm just very focused on making sure that our message gets out, that we are, releasing policy details regularly, so that we're talking about ideas. Fundamentally, that's the most important thing in this race for me, that we're talking about ideas. All too often, election campaigns are about personalities and about slicing and dicing. I think that this should be about ideas. We should be talking about tangible policy proposals that Conservatives want to discuss and that Canadians are interested in hearing.
There is a perception that the Conservative Party is in sort of a battle for defining what the party is. I think that has happened after every leadership debate. I'm not sure that it's been successful, but there's been an attempt at that. Do you think that that's what's happening, that there's a battle for what the party is? And are you concerned, as one of your colleagues, Mr. Charest, is, that if you go down a certain path, embodied perhaps by Mr. Poilievre, it will no longer represent the party that you believe in?
I think that this is actually a battle for the soul of our country. And again, I come back to the divisive rhetoric and the politics of division that we've seen for decades. Politicians and the political class have been more than happy to pit one region against another to try to win votes. And I think that there's division within our movement, within our caucus even. Yeah. I've been preaching that we need to be unified, but unity doesn't mean uniformity. We need to respect each other, we need to listen to each other, and that's part of the problem in our party and certainly in our country. We've stopped listening to each other. People are frustrated, they're angry, I understand that, but fanning the flames of anger and frustration doesn't solve problems. It doesn't actually get anything changed. And I think you only have to look south of the border to see what this kind of divisive rhetoric and this kind of language does to the public discourse in a country. We're on that trajectory. I'm concerned, I'm worried about it. I think it's devastating for our country. And so I think that this is a crucial point here. And it's why I decided to run for leader, because my experience as a leader, as a municipal leader, has always been that leadership is about inspiring, empowering, and engaging the team around you to do great things.
Just quickly on the last question, there is a French debate coming up. Do you speak fluent French? Are you going to be able to actively participate in that debate?
I'm going to be fairly active in that debate. I started lessons when I got elected in 2019, and I'm at an intermediate level now, so okay. I'm obviously not quite as fluent as a couple of the other candidates,
yes,
but I suspect I'll be better than a couple of the others. So, okay. But I'm making progress, and okay. I'm committed to being fluently bilingual by the next election.
All right, Mr. Aitchison, thank you. Nice to meet you. I appreciate you making the time, sir.
Thanks, Rosie. I appreciate it.